Tony D and Little Joan with a screenwriter's take. I actually watched something on Fallout, the first episode from Amazon Prime. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it girl bossy things? Yeah, to most of that. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Check out my books. The links are in the description. Comedy Heart in South Jersey. It's the Pineys, books 1 through 14. Available at Amazon.com. Don't forget, Kindle Unlimited is free. That's a good shot. I'll leave it there. So here's the deal. First, I'll give you my non-spoiler review, and then I'll give you a breakdown of it. This is what I do, and I look at this differently as a screenwriter and a video game guy. So understand, I'm coming at this from a screenwriter's perspective. So overall, in the general non-spoiler review, the first episode's pretty watchable if you played the video game. If you haven't played the video game, I don't know how you'd follow this show. If you haven't played the video game, you'd be like, wow, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on. I don't know what's going on, but things have happened. So it's not particularly good rollout of the concepts. The look of it is amazing. I mean, the look is spot on video game. It looks like they spent the kind of money they spent on Rings of Power to make the look, and that they nail for the most part, I think. You know, the buildings are from the video. I keep recognizing buildings and scenery from the video game. It's pretty cool on that level. From a story standpoint, there's too many characters. If you had done this even just 10 years ago, I'll tell you exactly how I would have scripted it. It would have been two characters. Walter Goggins plays what's known as a ghoul. And I have to explain what a ghoul is because some of you go, what's a ghoul? And I don't blame you for asking that question. But a ghoul in the video game is someone who, this is a post-apocalyptic America in an alternate universe where America, like the 50s, never ended, basically. And he is what's known as a ghoul because when the nuclear winter came and the nuclear war came, some people were turned into ghouls and they sort of thrive on radiation. And they live, we don't know how long they lived, but they lived from the era of pre-nuclear war into the current day of the video game and the show. So Walter Goggins is a cowboy TV star from that pre-war era, which is great because he could narrate the entire show and tell you what the F is going on. Lucy is a vault dweller. Now, they built massive vaults, basically nuclear bunkers, to survive the apocalypse. And these are the descendants of the survivors. So they tend to be skilled and have lots of new weapons and stuff, but they're naive. So she's okay. We'll get into her in a minute. So if you just had those two in the show, I think you'd be fine. You could have Walter Goggins constantly telling Lucy, hey, this is the way it is, baby. And, it would be like she was his sidekick learning the ropes. And you would be up on everything. He could protect her, and thereby you have a reason for them to team up. Like he could remind her of his lost love or something. It'd be great. That is exactly how it should have been scripted. Instead, they kind of go in a slightly different direction where they add a third character, which he's not a bad character, but he's the worst of the three. So without giving up too much away, can you break this down into 3 acts? Kind of not. It's kind of all 1 acts. it's one act of Lucy, her origin story, sort of two parts of one act for Walter Goggins, and a first act for Maximus, who's the third character. And they jump around, and again, they don't explain. Like, I know what's going on. Like, it's a perfect setup for another video game if you've already played Fallout. But if you don't know what Fallout is, and they didn't even have the narration from the video game, which I missed. So, overall, normies, you're going to be completely lost. It might be the sort of thing you get into and go, okay, I'm going to stick with this until I figure out all this crazy stuff and why it happens. That could work for you. They are explaining it. They're just taking their good old time. And it's not uninteresting because the world the video game created is pretty spectacularly built. However, anybody with a high bar for, I need to know what the F is going on in my shows, probably is going to get tired and go, I can't watch this nonsense. Fortunately, they're aiming it at the video game crowd. 90% of the viewers are going to be video game. I don't think, like, I have friends and relatives, they're not into this stuff. They would never watch this show. It wouldn't even be on their radar. They would go, what? Fallout? What is that? Oh, it's based on this video game. Out. So, unless you played the video game, Now, if a normie watched this show, would they like it? I think they would find it awfully bloody and not particularly engaging. Because there's a lot to take in, and it gets super bloody fairly quickly. So, now, as a video game person, is it good? It's okay. It's like an introduction to yet another Fallout game, which I wish they made instead of this show, but it's not great. It's like okay, and I can kind of see where they're going, and I'm not super happy about it. And one other thing is I watched half the first episode, got bored, went to bed, figured, well, I'll watch the other half so I can review it. So I'm not very invested in these characters or the show. I kind of want to watch more, but only because I like the video game so much. But I'm seeing clips of the future episodes. Some of the other nerds have binge watched a little further. I'm not liking the clips I'm seeing, that's for sure. Now they're picking it apart, and they're picking it apart on the one character I have a problem with. Well, not a problem, but he's the worst of the three. Okay, so that includes my non-spoiler review. If you like the video game, you might like the show. If you don't know the video game, I don't think you'll like this. I think you'll just be like, what? Huh? What is going on? So, let's do the non-spoiler review now. Okay? Now we're really going to tear this thing apart. Okay, so the show starts with Lucy. Well, it starts with Walter Goggins before the war, and then you see part of the war. I don't know if it's a realistic interpretation of how a nuclear war would go off, and he would be near enough to feel part of the blast, but not near enough to really suffer, say, I don't know, the burns. My understanding, there'll be 500-mile-an-hour winds and then stretch out for quite a distance. So I don't think you could be up in the hills of Los Angeles and survive a nuke in Los Angeles. But maybe there's smaller nukes, one would argue, because it is an alternate universe and yada, yada, yada. That all being said, it sets up Walter Goggins, starts the nuclear war, and then cuts to 219 years later, and it's Lucy in the vault, living her life. Oh, they're having a great time in the vault. Their vault is still functional, but Lucy has to be married to another vault dweller in order to perpetuate the species. Okay, makes sense. So they cut a deal with Vault 30. I think they're 33, and they cut a deal with Vault 32. So they have a big wedding, and then it's our wedding day, and all the vault dwellers from the other vault come, but they're a bit shifty-eyed, and they're led by a woman. And then at some point during the wedding night, all hell breaks loose, and it turns out they're raiders. Now, there's several problems with this. Several problems. The first problem is, if you were going to marry your daughter off to another group of people in another vault that you supposedly, I would assume, have some amount of communication with, you would kind of know the people a little bit. So I didn't think the setup was all that great. I really didn't. Like, the raiders are able to mimic the vault dwellers, and then, you know, during this wedding feast, then like nobody picks up on it. The first thing is that Lucy picks up on it later when she uses her little wrist thingy, the thing from the game. What is it called? The Pip-Boy? The Pip-Boy, and scans her groom, who she's already had sex with, by the way, to find out, oh, you've got lots of high radiation. Oh no, you're a raider. Why wouldn't anybody do that the moment they walked in? By the way, every man, especially in the vault, is completely ineffectual. The men in the Raiders, of course, are all evil. I couldn't find pretty much a single man who's really competent in this show. So for those of you saying, oh, it's not that woke, it's pretty good. No. See, they're just holding it back. Like, they're just like, okay, we can't make it super woke right in the beginning. We'll just hold it back. But Lucy is clearly going to be the girl boss. She's clearly going to be running the show. Anyhow, so her groom tries to kill her on her wedding night. Now, besides the fact that they didn't screen the other vault dwellers, that they're just taken in by this very easy ruse, another problem with it is Lucy jumps on this guy's D like that. Right? She's supposed to be a naive vault dweller that, you know, kind of like a 50s girl. Oh, but let's do this. That seemed a little bit much. But again, who writes this show? I would speculate that a lot of the writing on this show in the writer's room, you know, we got to show how terrible marriage is. And that's the symbology of the opening scene with Lucy. It's her wedding night. She's willing to give herself up, quote unquote, to the people of the vault so she can procreate. But that, of course, is the worst idea ever in the history of ideas, symbolically on this show. But, you know, she can at least get some before the killing starts. Also, the sex scene, and this is a weird comment coming from me, is completely unnecessary. It really is. Like, and Lucy isn't naked, he is. So the guy who's pretending to be a vault dweller just drops trowel, is completely naked, and then Lucy's, okay, let's do this. But all she does is take off her panties and then have sex with him with her clothes on. And then they're lying in bed and she still has her dress on, but he's completely naked. No. You can't have it both ways, Fallout writers. Either Lucy was getting a little bit on the side. She's a little loose Lucy, they called her in the vault. And she'd be perfectly fine ripping off all her clothes, in which case we should have gotten our booby shot. Or, you know, the raider who seems to be holding it together to pose as her groom should at least be cognizant of, yeah, I'm not gonna get completely naked and, you know, I'm gonna seduce her a little bit. But okay. But okay. Um, and they're kind of rushing that along, which is again why I think they should have concentrated on fewer characters. So Lucy and her groom fight to the death. She basically kills him. Um, and then the raiders just suddenly start popping out of everywhere and killing all the vault dwellers. It's not very smart. The map of the vault isn't really interesting in the show. They could have done something with that. Would have been more interesting. The only part of the map that makes any sense is the gateway out or the gateway to the adjoining vault. Now, the adjoining vault, they didn't really make it clear. It feels like the adjoining vault is right next door, in which case, the Vault 33 should have known Vault 32 was wiped out by raiders and taken over, and they should know the major players in the group. At the very minimum, they should have known the major players. Now, the way that went down is poorly scripted. Poorly scripted, in my view. Again, that's a screenwriter's take. From a video game stance, you probably could have made it work. You probably could have overlooked it. But even the video game scripters were better than this. They probably would have had a thing in it. Oh, where's Johnson? Oh, Johnson's not feeling well, so he's not coming to the wedding. He sent me instead. I'm his new assistant. Oh, I didn't meet you. That's weird. Like, at least give us something like that. Instead, they give us these looks and like no one knows anybody. At best, and it doesn't jibe with the raiders in the game. The raiders in the game don't have this kind of elaborate strategy, in my view. The raiders in the game would have just been like, hey, open the vault. We've got your groom here. Oh, okay. And then they open the vault and they just come pouring across and just start killing everybody. They might as well have done that. The vault dwellers are so stupid. They don't check anybody. That would have made at least slightly more sense. Either that or they just, I don't know, break into the vault and just start killing everybody. The combat is good. It's very bloody. Very bloody like the game, like cartoon bloody. So then they massacre a bunch of people. And then there's this weird moment where the leader of the Raiders say to Kyle MacLachlan, who plays Lucy's dad, you can choose between her or like 6 other members of your vault. Which do you choose? So he locks her in a room, which I guess means he chooses her, and then goes with the Raiders. And then the Raiders set off a bomb, right? And you think, oh, it's going to kill all these people we've been introduced. No, they run away down into the hall of the vault, and it explodes. Lucy is near the explosion, but she's in a room, so she's okay. I don't understand what the Raiders' plan was. Like, the Raiders' plan in Fallout would have been to kill and enslave everybody. Or enslave. Right? Maybe they have access to slavers, and they're going to take everybody topside and sell them off. Or they just kill them. And maybe eat them. Because you know what happens in Fallout. Now, I could understand rolling that back. But if the purpose of the Raiders is to introduce the main villain, who's going to be the Raider leader, and then eventually they get beat back, then what needed to happen, something to make more sense. Like, something that could have made more sense would have been the Raiders capture Kyle MacLachlan and hold him as a hostage or slave, and the people of the vault capture one of them. Capture the son of the bandit queen or raider queen. Like, that could have worked, and it could have been her groom, right? So she could have knocked out the groom, tied him up. Then they could have had this big confrontation, and at the end, the raider queen says, give me back my son. and Lucy says no, or put your weapons down or whatever. And she's got her father, and they say, we're gonna leave. And then maybe the other raiders are like, come on, let's just leave. And the bandit queen wants her son back, and she says, well, we'll be back. Like something like that. And then you have a reason why Kyle MacLachlan would even still be alive. In Fallout, what would have happened? Oh, they would have killed him. They would have killed him. They wouldn't even have thought twice about it. So it makes no sense. Anyhow, moving on from that, they cut to Maximus, who is in the Brotherhood of Steel. Now, for those of you who don't know, because the show ain't going to tell you yet, the Brotherhood of Steel is this organization of guys who use power armor. They're modeled after knights of old, and they're kind of quasi-religious and sort of like the Marines. So Maximus is training to be a brother, right? He wants to be a knight in power armor. So he's training, and things aren't going good for him. He gets beaten up, but don't worry. His I don't know what she is. Is she trans? It's a woman, a manly woman, helps him out. Oh, don't worry. The manly woman is here to make everything good. So manly woman is his friend, and is helping him out, but he's kind of messed up. But they keep putting him on latrine duty, and he doesn't like it. Then she gets promoted to squire, which is, she's going to assist one of the knights before you become a knight. And then there's a big celebration. He can't celebrate with her. And then later, and this is really gross, she goes to put on her boots, and then there's a razor blade in her boot, and it cuts her leg, cuts her foot pretty deeply. So now she can't go on the mission. And they don't know who put the razor blade in there. They think it might be Maximus, but they're not sure. It could be one of the other guys, jealous of her. Because of course we're all jealous of the women bosses. Anyhow, he gets promoted instead. And now he becomes a squire. And now he's going on a mission to find the MacGuffin. And the MacGuffin is this scientist and a dog. And I think the dog is the cybernetic dog you get in the game. So then the next thing that happens, it cuts back to the vault, and it's a fallout from the massacre, and they're rebuilding. And now Lucy wants to go topside to save her father, which is an incredibly dumb idea if they know what the raiders are like. And the initial response should have been, there's no way he's still alive. Like, that should have been the response. Because they just wantonly kill people in the game and in this show. There's no reason for Kyle MacLachlan to be kept alive. Like, none. He doesn't have any secrets they would need. He doesn't have any information. He's an older guy, probably not that valuable as a slave. There's no reason to keep him alive. But Lucy wants to go find him, and you can understand that motivation. It's her dad. She wants to go. Her younger brother's in the show. That's kind of a cool... Her character isn't bad. But she's clearly being set up to be the girl boss. She's the only kind of competent one. The men in the vault are like, I don't know what to do. I'm weepy. There's one female vault leader who's kind of competent. But they won't let her go. So she and her brother and... the guy who's, I guess he's a cousin of hers, because everybody in the vault's related because they didn't have enough people to really repopulate. He's like, oh, let me go with you, and he's the key master of the vault stuff. She goes no and tranks him, and then she escapes to the outside, and she sees devastated Los Angeles. And that's pretty much the end with her. And that's all we get to see. Next episode, and the final scene is Walter Goggins being dug up as a ghoul. Like, this is the first time we see him as a ghoul. He's in a coffin and everything. The guys dig him up. And, yeah, I don't know why he's in a coffin. Like, in the game, they're just roaming around. But he's in a coffin. Because, I don't know, some gangster uses him for something weird. Someone more powerful is using Walter Goggins for something weird. Anyhow, these three mercenaries dig him up. And Walter Goggins turns the tables on him and kills them all. Which was cool. Goggins is great in the role, as he's great in everything. Again, I would see a show where it starts with Walter Goggins, right? Like, you see the opening scene, the bombs go off, Walter Goggins is making a run for it with his kid, and then it cuts to 219 years later, and Walter Goggins is still walking around. Like, that would have been an amazing cut. I mean, I guess you could do the thing where they dig him up if you want, but, you know, I would have definitely focused on Walter Goggins and then have him explain why the F he's still walking around. Now, you could do Lucy the same way, essentially. I would cut Max's completely. Maximus is dead weight on this show. It's not that he's a bad character. You could have done a show just on him, right? You could have, if you wanted to, you could have started the show on him. But he's like in a completely different mode, right? He's got a different origin story. The three characters together aren't going to be great. Like, Lucy and Walter Goggins make sense because Goggins has all the knowledge and all the cynicalness of the topside world, and Lucy has the mission. She's the naive one. And then through that relationship, Walter Goggins can redeem himself. And that's a classic story. And it's a classic story for a gunfighter, which he's sort of aping, right? And I think, I don't know, I don't think they put a lot of Fallout stuff for the Southwest and West Coast yet, but I don't think so. Well, Vegas. There weren't a lot of cowboys in Vegas, I don't remember. New Vegas. I would have liked to have seen Goggins being the only guy with a cowboy hat, personally. That, to me, would have made him more unique. But, whatever. It should have just been Goggins narrating with Lucy as his sidekick learning the ropes. But they're never going to do that. Like, that would be the most obvious choice to me. But they're never going to do that because Lucy's going to be in charge, everybody. Maximus apparently is a bumbling idiot, somehow eventually gets his own power armor, probably because the helicopter he's in gets shot down. Everybody's killed but him, and then he takes the power armor and becomes the new power armor guy. But again, it's the wasteland. Like, you do whatever you want. I mean, that was the video game. That was the feel of the video game. We don't have that feel here. We have a feeling of a lot of chaos, but this is why you need one character or maybe two. You could have done it with Goggins and the girl. And actually, you don't need the girl. It would have been great to just have Goggins just walk out of the radioactive mist. Yeah, 219 years later, I'm still walking around. Long story. And then he tells his story, and then he's a badass, but something changes, right? He decides, somebody reminds him of his lost love, and he decides, no, I'm not going to be this way anymore. I'm going to redeem myself. And after 219 years, you see him redeem himself. That would be fantastic. I would totally watch a show like that. This one, I'm kind of not on board because I can kind of see where this is going. It's going to lead to Lucy meeting more girl bosses, more men who get emasculated and trip over their own shoes, but are evil somehow. But don't worry, Lucy's there to tell you how to rebuild civilization, everybody. I can see it. I can see it in this first episode. They've laid the groundwork. They've tried to keep it as balanced as possible, but knowing they're heading in that direction, I'd say. And Maximus, again, just kind of dead weight. I mean, it's an okay character. It's not a bad setup, but he'd have been better off getting the sole focus of the show. You could have done the show Fallout based on Maximus. Excuse me. It wouldn't have been as interesting, I think, because the Brotherhood of Steel is not that interesting. You know, the video game can only go so deep in that. You know, their quasi-religious devotions and stuff. That's not that interesting. Goggins is interesting because he remembers life before the war, and he can fill in all the gaps. Lucy could, maybe. She would be my second choice if you were just going to go with one character. You could set it up. I would have the Raiders roll out differently, but you could set it up that, yeah, she has to find her dad in the waste. They kidnap her dad, and then she's going into the wasteland. Nobody wants to follow her. I thought initially they were going to wipe everybody out in the Vault 33, like completely. I suspect that maybe later in the show, if she ever gets back, they will be all dead. Maybe her brother survives and she has to save him. But, you know, I would have gone with Lucy second because her story would be a story of a naive person who's thrust into this horrible world and has to learn to survive. But, of course, since she's a female character, she's already awesome, which is what's going to undermine the entire show, in my view. Because if she's already awesome and she already keeps beating all the men, you know, and it's only a few women who give her some problems. You know, why is Walter Goggins even there? Why is Maximus even there? Well, Maximus seems to be there to be the comic relief and the incompetent man, whereas Goggins, I guess, will be there to function as the guy who says, oh yeah, this, and this. This is why that's there. This is what happened after the after the war started. But you really needed a wind up to what the hell this world even is. Amazon, like, the normies are not going to get this. They're just not. They're going to have to go online and do a search and then read the history of this world. Because it's not America. It's an alternate version of America. You know? It's an alternate version of America. And there's a extreme difference in the histories here. Not that extreme, but enough so you'd have to go, okay, so here's, I mean, some of the fight scenes are just cool. I mean, they got a lot of it, look-wise. The monsters are looking cool, you know. And another problem with it is there's not a lot of sense of humor in this. And I wish these lefty writers would hire anyone else outside of their political views. Because these people absolutely cannot write comedy. So they cannot write a light take on everything. Everything is dark to them. Everything. That's why the marriage scene is particularly bad to me. Because, number one, it's painfully obvious her groom is not who he says he is. And she's ready to bang him anyway. Which shows you, like, Lucy has complete blinders on. And she's not as cool and girl bossy as you think. Now, if you were going to build upon that, like, every time Lucy's in the waist and she sees a semi-hot guy, she jumps in the sack with him, that could be kind of funny. I wouldn't go down that path, but it would be hilarious if you had a character like that. You know, or maybe Lucy had a sidekick who was female, and at first she's a virgin flower, but then she becomes like a total sex maniac. That could be kind of funny. But you have to live in reality to write comedy. I don't think these people do. Even in this reality, you can write comedy, you know? Um, you got a lot of potential here. And I don't mean outright laugh comedy. I mean like, uh, humorous light moments. When they try to do it now, they completely fail. One of the clips I saw online of a future episode is Goggins shooting up the guy Maximus in power armor, and the power armor malfunctions and he goes flying off. And the effect, number one, is terrible. But beyond that, he goes flying off like a balloon. And I guess that's supposed to be funny. It's so not. It's an interesting visual, but it's not funny. Goggins is the funniest thing in this show. But it's kind of, again, a mean funny. Like Goggins is good at. He's like a badass in a lot of the stuff he's in. And, he can pull that off. And he could be sort of glib in these tense situations. But everybody around them, they're not. Like Maximus is totally ineffectual. Lucy is a naive girl boss. You need meaner guys around Goggins. I assume they're coming, but I would have been better off. You would have been better off making Goggins the focus of this thing. He's clearly the strongest actor. Clearly, by a country mile. No offense to the other two actors. But he's a veteran. He's perfect in this role. He's sort of a pseudo cowboy. And, you could have made it all about him. It would have been great. He's a strong lead. A strong lead. Lucy should have been second banana. But it ain't going to happen in modern Hollywood. Just not going to happen. So, would I watch the rest of this? I'm not super emotionally invested in it. So maybe if I get 10 minutes and I don't read too many nerd reviews trashing the rest of the show, maybe I'd watch a second episode. Just because I like the look. It looks like the game, and I kind of miss the game, and I wish, again, they'd put out another game. Just a straight up game. Just exactly as they did. Another city in the United States, the map of it, some mutants, various obstacles. I can run around, shoot things, and rebuild my power armor and do what I did in the other games. It's not as fun just watching it. You need a fun crew. This is a dismal setting. Dismal. There's skeletons everywhere. People get blown to pieces. You gotta lighten it up. I guarantee you the people who played the game would make jokes all the time. All the time. But, you're not getting that here. Because, again, I don't think anybody on this writing staff could crack a joke to save their life. I mean, look at this shot. This guy's got his foot blown off. Should be screaming in pain. Screaming. Ugh, that's awful. I don't even like looking at that, but Jesus. But like Goggins is doing all the cowboy things. Look at this shot here. He's doing the thing with the brim. He's going to lift his head up, and then it's on. He conserves his moves. He only moves when he needs to. I mean, why wouldn't you want a cowboy in the radioactive West? Holy cow, what a great name. I just came up with it. Fallout 5, a cowboy in the radioactive West. Ah, how awesome is that name? I love that name. I may use it. TM. Without Fallout, of course. But, yeah, I don't know. Is this going to survive? There may be enough gamers to watch this show. There may be enough gamers who tolerate it until it gets too girl bossy and they eventually start going, hey, stop emasculating Walter Goggins and Maximus and let them do something once in a while. Let them actually solve something, figure something out. Ladies, Will we get that? Nah, I don't think so. Not super confident in Prime. Anyhow, that's it for me. I know it's kind of, you wonder why I don't do reviews anymore. This is why. Because every time I review something, I end up down this path going, God, this is effed up. It could have been great. But instead, it's kind of like, they spent millions and millions of dollars to give you the shiniest turd ever. Anyhow, tune in and Odysee, Bitchute, and Rumble for my more base takes. If you could find a more base take than that, I say take it. Saturday, I'll be at the Burlington County Book Fest from 10 to 3 at the Burlington County Library. Then at 5 o'clock, I'll be at Cumberland County Historical Society. That's in Greenwich, New Jersey. And then finally on Sunday, I will be at the Hamilton bookstore called The Book Trader. So that's from 11 to 3. So hope to see you there. We'll see you